Greetings and salutations to everyone in viewerland. Welcome to the Thursday edition, the Thirsty Thursday edition of The Rundown. I am your host for today's program. My name is Mike Poworski, but I do not do this program by myself.
No, you do not, Michael. My name is Craig DeLuz. I'm coming at you from the West Coast. That's right, from behind the Iron Curtain, otherwise known as the Sierras in California, bringing you, news from an anti-gun state.
There you go. There you go. Craig, now we're both hosting today, and neither one of us hosted yesterday.
No, we did not. No, we did not. As we've talked about and pontificated on the show before, being entrepreneurs, sometimes you are, how shall we say, you got to serve your clients, and unfortunately, that meant serving them during the time that we're normally serving you. Sorry, guys.
Yep. Yep. We were otherwise decisively engaged. That's how I like to say it.
Otherwise,
Yep.
decisively engaged. I like that. I like that.
So how was your otherwise decisively engaged day, sir?
It was good. It was a very productive day. Got a lot of stuff done. Doing some work on a couple of different websites. Anyway. Business is booming. We'll just put it that way.
There you go. There you go. There you go. Yeah, I spent the majority of the day with the boss, taking care of him. So it was just one of those things where we had to do a lot of work. Couldn't get away. So, but all good stuff. Pays the bills, right?
Definitely good stuff. And it's funny how news hits like on days when you're like not on, doesn't it?
Yes. Right. Exactly right. Those days you're looking for stories to do, and you're sitting there ready to go, and you can't find a single one. And the day you can't get to it, it's just a flood of stories. Yeah.
Flood o stories. So
Yep.
with
Yep.
that, I think we
Exactly.
should get right into it.
Let's do it. Let's get our first flood going. Uh, Craig, here's one that's is sure to get us banned again on the YouTubes. So we might as well just jump right into it because we have Pfizer scientists now. Over those guys over there that help create the vaccine for Pfizer, and he has come out and said. This is again publicly. It's not some stolen email or something crazy like that. That the antibodies are better than the vaccination. Their natural antibodies are better than the vaccinations. So, Craig, I know you and I talk about this a lot. What's what's better than one or the other? The vaccinations or the natural antibodies. We've already talked about. We've had some doctors say, many doctors now saying, if you do get the COVID after you've had it, don't go get the vaccination because your natural antibodies are going to be stronger. They're going to last longer. And when you put the vaccination in there, you're going to get this low level fight inside your body, which makes you feel miserable for an extended period of time. We also know, looking at hospital numbers, Craig, that the numbers are switching. It was something like 2 months ago, 74% of those in the hospital had not had the vaccination. And now that's flip flopped, almost exactly the same. The numbers I saw said 76% in the hospital now had the vaccination for COVID. So, this just goes to say, show Greg, like we've been talking about for a year and a half now, right? This is a bad case of, viral infection, the flu, whether it's the bird flu, swine flu, something like that. Is it deadly? Absolutely. There's no arguing that. But now, since the artificial panic has gone down and facts are starting to come out, we're knowing what we knew all along. We're knowing what we knew 10 years ago. We're knowing what we knew 50 years ago, that natural antibodies are stronger than vaccinations.
Well, it's funny because you're right. This is kind of an obvious thing. It's something that has been said, even from the very beginning. It was said that once you got it, those are going to be strong. And then once they started introducing the vaccine, even then it was like even the average everyday scientist or epidemiologist, whatever you want to call them, were saying that the natural immunity is going to be strong. And now they're finding in study after study that it's actually stronger. And even Pfizer's admitting that natural immunity is stronger. Now, don't get me wrong. If it is, you are less likely to wind up in the hospital when you get COVID, because all of us are eventually going to get it. If you've had the vaccine, it's less likely that you're going to wind up in the hospital. But even then, the chances of you winding up in the hospital, in particular if you're young and you're healthy, is very, very slim. But you're going to wind up, but if you do get it and you don't have the vaccine, you're going to have a better protection against future strains. And one of the funny things, you have people saying, well, strains mutating, you don't know if it's going to have an effect or not. Well, guess what? The same exact thing can be said of the vaccine. It's just there's so many instances where we are not following the science. And I just, you look at the best example of not following the science is Dr. Fakey. I don't know if you know, they're making a special on it. They're doing a documentary on him. And in the documentary, they have him walking down the street outdoors with a mask on, even though we know there's no documented cases of people getting COVID-19 outdoors. Oh, by the way, a fully vaccinated Dr. Fakey outdoors wearing a mask. And yet we're supposed to believe that he's supposed to be the perpetrator, the deliverer of the quote unquote truth.
Is he wearing a life jacket?
No, but he is wearing a very heavy parka.
Or
at least what looks like one. I don't know. But I'm from California. I don't know what a heavy coat looks like. I visited, the first time I visited Chicago was in the middle of winter.
Right.
And I had what I thought was a heavy coat on, and I got out of the airport, and that Chicago winter wind took my coat and was like, that's no jacket.
Yeah. Just laughed right at it. Ha ha ha. I've got this one. Yep. Had the same thing happen to me a couple times going into Chicago, watch some ball games. So
you had shorts on too, didn't you?
I of course I did. I mean, why wouldn't I?
For those of you who don't know, I think I've only seen Mike in long pants once or twice in the 7 years that I've known him.
Listen, I officially retired about 5 or 6 years ago. 10 years ago from the first job, 5 or 6 years ago from the second job, and both those were professional attire, uniformed attire kind of jobs, right? And I said, well, that's it for Pants and me. We're done. Unless there's court or a wedding or a funeral involved, there's no Pants.
Mind you, he does wear shorts. They're short pants. He doesn't just walk around in his chonies.
Yeah. Now listen, they're real shorts. I'm not walking around in 1980s Larry Bird kind of shorts or anything like that. I've got real shorts on.
We wear short shorts.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. Hey, buddy, put the mouse back in the house. This is a family joint. So they're not that kind of shorts. All right. Let's see here. Let's see what we got going on. Yeah. So, all right. Enough on the vaccination. Let's see how long it takes YouTube to take us off again for spreading facts. So let's see. Craig, IRS. I know you have a very small dark place in your heart for IRS. So I figure I'll let you lead this one.
Yeah, okay. So here's the deal, folks, and if you have not been paying attention to the news, in the big massive not the infrastructure bill I don't know if it's in the infrastructure bill or if it's in the Turn America into France bill, the big social giveaway, for the big day of giving, but in this particular measure. There's a number of different things that they want to do, and they're going to dramatically expand the size and the scope of the IRS and the information that they're going to have access to. In fact, they're going to be spending several tens of billions of dollars to expand and hire new agents. And one of the things that these new agents are going to be doing is going to be basically monitoring and tracking transactions. They want to require banks to provide them with information on any transaction or group of transactions between two individuals that is over $600. Now, it's not just individual transactions. So in other words, maybe you pay someone $50 a month for something. Well, if in the entire year that totals $600, that then qualifies for something to be tracked by the IRS. So it's basically the IRS is going to be involved in just about every single transaction that you are in the middle of or that you are involved in. They're going to be knowing where exactly you're spending your money. And Mike, if this is not the biggest invasion of privacy, I don't know what is. I mean, think about this. So in other words, right now, in certain cases, they can't get the names of donors to certain nonprofits that they don't like, right? Groups that advocate for things that they don't like. Well, if you donate more than $600 to them in a year, your name is now going to go on a list. And we already know from a number of different leaks that people's financial information, including, for example, the President of the United States, his tax information has been somehow leaked to the IRS. Imagine them being able to get a copy of all of your information and say, okay, these people donated to this cause which we don't like, so now we're going to dox them. That's what this information is going to be used for.
Just, folks, to give you an idea of how ridiculous this number of 600 is, the current number for mandatory IRS reporting is $10,000. $10,000. So if you go to the bank and you have a transaction, whether it be a withdrawal or a deposit of over $10,000, then the bank has to do a special little notification, send it off to the IRS, and they can track it or eat it or do whatever they want with that notification. Now it's 600. Craig, this is half my bills during the month are over $600. Your mortgage payment, your car payments, that kind of stuff. This is ridiculous. I, as a business owner, Craig, routinely do transactions of over $10,000 a week now, and I've had to modify and adjust how I do my banking, because if I do a $10,000 transaction every week, I have a security clearance still, and I get people that knock on my door and want to know why I'm doing transactions that large, and I have to tell them it's the business, and then they go, "Oh, okay, sorry, thanks." But now, if you're going to make that for every person out there for doing every transaction, it's going to bring the system to a halt. It's going to bring banking to a halt. It's going to make banking ridiculously expensive again. It's going to force people to keep money in cash in their mattresses again. It's going to lead to distrust in the banking system and in the government. And Craig, remember what happens when that happens, right? Remember what happened when we started to lose faith in banking systems just about 100 years ago?
Yeah, it's called anarchy, folks. No, you're right. And a lot of people don't really understand that, when you start getting into every report, someone has to be paid to put together these reports. Someone has to do it and provide these reports to the IRS. And that costs the bank money. And the IRS isn't going to pay for that. You and I are going to pay for that. All of a sudden, the cost of our banking is going to go through the roof. Just because, once again, they have to turn around and they have to prepare these reports.
The cost and the time, So right. Not only is it going to cost more to bank there, but now, again, folks, I have to deal with this all the time. If I'm making a $9,999 deposit, I'm in and out in 5 minutes. If it's $10,001, it's a 15-minute transaction. It's going to take. That means somebody's doing a $605 transaction, that they're going to be 15 minutes in line. You ever waited in line in the bank? You ever had somebody take more than 2 minutes in front of you? You're ready to cut their legs off. You're just, you want to get. I stopped in here. It's supposed to be a fast bank. It's going to create anarchy, and it's going to create, businesses that only deal in cash.
Well, you get
happens when you only deal in cash.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because you get people who say, well, if you're not doing anything nefarious, then what's the big deal? You shouldn't worry about reporting. Well, no, but that's not how our system works. Our system works is that you only get to search me if you have reasonable suspicion to believe that I have committed a crime. You don't get to just search me and then all of a sudden, if you have no reason to believe I've done anything wrong, and if giving someone or doing a transaction with someone for $600 in a year is reasonable suspicion, well, then we got a problem here.
Yeah, and again, listen, I'm not even sure I'm concerned about that amount because, hey, you know what? You think that I did something nefarious with over $600? You know what? The burden's on you. You go prove it. I don't care. My issue is, Craig, if I got to take 15 to 20 minutes every time I go to a bank, somebody owes me about 4 extra hours a week. All right. And that's where it's going to come down to me becoming anti-bank, all transactions in cash. Screw the government.
Right. But see, my whole thing and my thing is even bigger is different than that. It is them knowing where your money goes and as a way to track who you're affiliated with, what programs, where as the government starts to establish enemies, and go look at a list of the organizations that are considered hate groups by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Now, there are some hate groups on that list, but there are also a number of groups that you and I know, that you and I recognize, like, well, let's see, Gun Owners of America, right?
Yeah.
That we know that are solid organizations that support our fundamental rights. Yeah, all of a sudden, if you donate to them a certain amount, you now go on an enemies list. And it's that sort of stuff that worries me, because you look, the IRS already went after conservative organizations once under the Obama administration. This way, they're going to be not just be able to go after the organization, they're going to be able to go after their donors.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. That's they're if they have to write it, if they get more than 21 memberships in a day, they're over the $600 ban. And I bet you
Right.
they don't make their deposits every day, you know?
Right.
So yeah, that means GOA and Second Amendment Foundation, NRA, everybody's going to be on that list where they're making those
Or
deposits for more
anyone
than
who
$600.
donates more than $600 to them.
Yeah, yeah, and any singular, yeah, exactly, right, right. Yeah.
Exactly. So, anyway, there's that. Anyway, it is just the ultimate of being able to track and create enemies lists for them to come after us.
Yep. Oh yeah. It's exactly what this is. This is Big Brother getting bigger and bigger, and Little Brother getting smaller and smaller. Craig, all right, let's move on here to some. I love this one. This is airports and firearms. We typically talk about this in a don't be a dumbass kind of guy. All right, listen. Before you go to the airport, and Craig and I frequently travel. Before you go to the airport, check yourself. Check yourself multiple times. Empty your bags completely out, because if you're like me, there's sometimes a loose round will pop out of a spare mag, or maybe at one point that bag was used for for a trip to the range, or maybe I was just cleaning up in my car and threw a round in there, because you get extra rounds bouncing around sometimes from those not quite full boxes of ammo. So check your bags. Check your bag. We talk about this all the time. Do the right thing. Make sure you're clean. Make sure you're clear. Make sure when you go to the airport, you're not the dumbass that's standing there with the alert going off and the FBI coming out to question you. You don't want to be that guy. All right. So that's the first part of this. That's where we usually go with these stories. Well, in Pennsylvania now, the federal U.S. Attorney's office there outside of Pittsburgh has decided they've had enough. They've seen a couple of stories in the local news that says Pittsburgh man or Pittsburgh woman, detained after firearm found in check or carry-on bags. Well, each airport's different. Each airport's security official, and it's the assistant federal director for law enforcement at each airport, sets those policies for TSA, whether it's they go to jail, they get a fine, whatever it happens to be. So, and their job is to, make sure the firearm doesn't get on the airplane. Then they issue a fine in very, very limited circumstances. If there's, evil intent that they can prove, then they could be facing prison time. For the most part, Craig, I'd say 80 to 90% of everything I've looked at says, here's your fine, or take your gun back to your car. Okay, don't be a dummy. Well, the feds there, the U.S. Attorney's Office, has decided that's not enough. So if the locals or the TSA get these guns, they're now going to be contacting whoever issued the firearms carry permit or the firearms owner permit from that individual, and working with, this is the Fed's words now, working with that issuing official to get their firearms permits revoked.
Well, okay. So first of all, my philosophy is what I do. I have separate bags that when I go to whether it's the range or something like that, that I put my firearms in. I try never to put my firearms in my normal traveling stuff so that sort of stuff doesn't happen. But even with that, I still do exactly like you said. I check through my bag. I look through my bag in order to make sure, because one round of ammunition will get someone losing their mind.
Yeah,
Over
absolutely.
you calling you a terrorist for having one round of 22 LR in your bag. But all that having been said, this is the example of, once again, like you talked about, it is clear federal overreach. It is them trying to insert themselves into the decision making of local government officials, and it's something that should not be permitted. The fact is, in particular, these folks, they don't want anyone to be able to have a firearm unless you have a badge, and that's sadly, that's just kind of the way these higher level law enforcement folks think. I can tell you the average law enforcement officer doesn't believe that. Poll after poll, study after study demonstrates that. But when you start getting into the upper echelons, these elites don't believe that you should be able to carry a firearm, and they're going to look at every opportunity to be able to take that right away from you.
Craig, here's a very important part about this. One of the reasons that you and I picked this story is that for the last couple of years now, during the Obama administration, and again towards the first 11 months here of the Biden administration, we've seen counties and we've seen states and cities come out and say we are a Second Amendment sanctuary town. We're a Second Amendment sanctuary town. Now, most of that was clearly symbolic because those said we will not allow any federal overreach to violate our Second Amendment rights. Now, there wasn't going on, right? So this was a statement to the feds that says if you come to my jurisdiction and try and overstep your bounds on the Second Amendment, we will not comply and we will help you outside. We will help you leave our jurisdiction. All right. This is what that is now.
Right.
This is a step. This is the feds coming down and saying, just like you said, Craig, we are here to stick our nose in your local government affairs concerning firearms ownership. Well, now, if you're a Second Amendment sanctuary county, you've got the law on the books that says, "Hey, feds, out the door's right over there. Go that way because you're not welcome here. We will not allow you to do this here."
Get now.
Yep. That's it. Yeah, take that with you. Yeah. So that's the benefit, folks. Here you go. This might be. We'll see. One of those first actual applications of the Second Amendment Preservation Acts and those sanctuary towns for firearms protections. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Craig, you remember 2-3 weeks ago we talked about. In fact, I remember the day exactly because it was the 13th of September was when New York City's their vaccination cards, mandatory vaccination cards, went into effect, and this was 2 or 3 days after that. So 14th, 15th, or 16th, sometime during that week, we talked about a group of 3 black women. I think it was a mother, daughter, and then another older woman about the mother's age. Went to Carmine's up on the Upper West Side to get into a restaurant. Well, Craig, you and I theorized what happened because all we had was a video. All right. I think the theory we came up with is maybe the woman accused them of having a fake vaccine. And remember, you can have it on your phone because they have an app now in New York because they want to make it easy for you to prove that you're violating your own rights and everybody else's rights around you. So what we know from this story now is that's exactly what happened. Maybe not the phone, but these women were accused of having fake vaccination cards, or somebody else in their party was accused of it.
It was someone else. They all had their vaccination cards. It was some guys who showed up afterwards.
Yeah, they were accused of it. I guess the women went out to confront. Well, the serious allegation here is that I guess there's multiple witnesses said this, and I believe she wasn't a white girl. I'm trying to remember what her race is.
She was Asian.
Was she Asian?
Okay. They really noted. They didn't say what specific
Asian
nationality or ethnicity, but they said Asian.
But evidently, she started throwing around the N-bomb with these African American folks, and that's when it went sideways quick.
So you said, and I hear that the multiple eyewitness accounts. Was it all the people who were in their group who said it?
People in their group and a few other patrons.
Okay.
That's how I read it. Now here's a couple of things of irony out of this, Craig. One, again, we've already talked about that the restaurant association is saying things like people need to get their vaccination cards. It's our job to make sure everybody has their vaccination. And again, like you and I've said multiple times, it's not your job. It's your job to provide service to the customer. All right. Don't do the government's bidding for them. That's not your job. Second, I don't know if you saw this, Craig, because we just had a story on it last week, was that the police report took the 3 black women to jail. Out of everybody there, they took the 3 black women to jail. And I think that's vastly because of the video. They could see that they were engaged in a fight.
They were the physical aggressors.
Right. But the police report says the fight between all of them was mutual combat. Mutual combat. We just saw a story out of Chicago last week, Craig, where a group of gang members shot another group of gang members who shot back at them. One, I believe, killed and others severely injured. and the city declined to prosecute, declined to press charges because it was mutual combat.
Well, you know, and that, by the way, that's a whole nother story that we're not talking about. A lot
Yep.
of these George Soros elected district attorneys, that's
Yep.
what they're doing. They're not prosecuting people who are going around and killing people because they're calling it mutual combat, and they're refusing to prosecute.
Yes. Yeah, they're not prosecuting. Let's be clear on this too. They're not prosecuting minorities and criminals. They're not
Right.
prosecuting people that they can earn their votes from in the community.
Wow. I mean, and by the way, this is shocking. We'll talk a little bit more about this maybe in
Yeah.
tomorrow's episode, but it is crazy. As a matter of fact, you know, that's what we should do. We should find instances and let's talk about each one of those. That would actually be a great show. Just
Yeah.
point these things out because here's the thing, folks. Number one, like Mike said, they're picking out specifically people of color, and they are the ones who are in the end not being prosecuted. Now, if you were to defend yourself because someone attacked you, if there was anything wrong with any instance of self-defense, even if you just brandished a weapon, like, oh, I don't know, in like McCluskey did, you're going to be arrested.
Yep. Yep.
But if it's mutual combat, well, let me clarify. If you're a person of color, or if you're gay or trans, or you're one of the other numerous victims groups, then you would be considered. It would be considered mutual combat.
Yeah. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. All right. Let's move on. We will do more research on that. We will get you more instances, and perhaps, like Craig said, we'll get you a full show out of that. So, let's talk about Craig. This one just kind of irked me about again the media, the way they respond. There's an elderly black woman. I believe she's about 80 years old in Texas. She cannot vote, and of course the story is black woman barred from voting. Crap. By the way, this woman. Now that Real ID is in effect, folks, if you don't know what Real IDs are, and they come as a result of 9/11, getting true government verified IDs, to make sure they're verified more than just by, going into the county clerk, throwing them $20 and getting an ID. You've got to have actual proof. You got to have a birth certificate. You got to have a passport. You got to have something that's actual proof of who you are. It's not no longer the days of I made up a name and I went down and got my own ID, so I could drink and then I kept the name. It's much more than that with the Real IDs. Well, this woman says she doesn't have a birth certificate. She says when she was born, she was birthed by a midwife, so she doesn't have a birth certificate. Well, somewhere, Craig, into 80 years, she decided never to go get a birth certificate. She has her driver's license, but it's expired, and they won't give her a new one until she gives a birth certificate. She has a couple other forms of ID, but as she says in the story, they won't give her a new driver's license with that. And then the goal is to vote, not to drive. Okay, the goal is to vote, not to drive for her. And the state has come on board, the state of Texas, and said, listen, all you got to do is bring that old driver's license down and one of those other forms of IDs that you just said you had, and we'll give you a voter identification card. And that voter ID card is all you need to vote. And I don't drive, so I can't get there, so you're not allowing me to vote. So she wants to vote from home, Craig, but she can't get to the place to go get a voter ID. And so she says it's anti-race, or it's racist, and the laws are anti-black people, so they can't vote. It's restrictive laws. They're trying to take the vote from minorities.
Well, so my question is so in other words, that is something that happens only to black people. So only black people who are 80 years old were birthed by midwives and therefore don't have social security card or don't have birth certificates, right? Only black people at 80 years old don't drive. So therefore cannot get to the DMV. But the other thing is that I'm figuring that she's able to go anywhere else. She was able to figure. Tell you what. How about this? How about the news reporter who showed up to her house to do the story? How about they give her a ride over to the DMV over to the thing where she can get her ID to be able to vote? What about that? Why can't they fix that? Or why can't her local Democratic Party? Because they're willing. They used to drive them to the polls. They used to drive their folks to the polls. Why can't they do it? I mean, if you want to vote, you can vote. It is idiotic, and to me, it is the most condescending, racist thing to say that black people can't get an identification to be able to vote. It is even more condescending when you consider the fact that the generation that has survived, as long as as that generation, you're telling me that there's no way that they can get an ID to be able to vote. I am quite sure that if you reached out to your county officials, they'd find a way to make sure that you can get your ID. I'm sorry, I'm not buying it.
Yeah, and that's what's happened a couple of times. And the state and the county have called her and said, "Here's how you do it." And her response and her daughter's response is, "She's not allowed to vote because she's old and black." It's just, Craig, like you said, it only happens to black people that get to be 80 years old and they can't vote. No, it's just those are only those are the only stories that the media will cover is the elderly black people that have not figured out how to get down to the elections office and get the free election ID, election ID that they have waiting for her down there. So,
well, of course, because it's racist.
Optics, media, it's how it works, right? This is again another one of them states that made voting more secure, expanded voting hours, expanded the methods you could vote, but all of a sudden, that's racist. That's racist.
Yep.
So, Craig, let's move on to our parting shot, or as I would like to think of it, our parting 10,000 shots. So,
a lot of folks don't really. I mean, here's the thing. Now, I won't say how many firearms I own, but needless to say, compared to my friends in the gun community, I have a starter kit. But if you talk to the average person, a person who's nothing about firearms, they think I have an arsenal, right? You see repeatedly in stories where they talk about so-and-so was found with an arsenal of firearms that included maybe 3 or 4, and hundreds of rounds of ammunition, as if it's a lot. But now, if you're in the gun
have those
community,
on me every day. So yeah,
what'd you say?
I typically have those on me every day.
But if you're in the gun community, if you're someone who participates either, whether it's in the shooting sports,
Wait, did you say the gun community? I'm going to interrupt you there.
No, go ahead.
Did you say the gun community?
The Second Amendment civil rights, the gun community.
Oh,
yes, I
gotcha.
said the gun
Okay,
community.
all right, just checking. All right.
What'd you think I said?
I thought you said gun community, and you know how I feel about gun community. That's a trigger word.
I know. Well, not everybody who's a gun owner is in the gun community.
Correct.
We know
there
that.
you go.
Yes, not everybody who is a gun owner is a part of the gun community. That's why I say if you're in the gun community, then you know that, if you're in the gun community, chances are you go to the range regularly, you train, and you make sure you have enough ammunition, for each firearm in case, the poop hits the fan. So Mike sent over this one, and it is hilarious. So now, you know how these tweets are. You got to read the bottom first. So this guy, Dave, says, how would you react if you found out your next door neighbor had over 40 guns and over 10,000 rounds of ammunition? And Jesse Kelly, I love this. I'd probably go talk to my neighbor. I'd be calm about it because I realize everyone has different values. But I'd explain to him that 10,000 rounds and 40 weapons means he only has 250 rounds per weapon. Not nearly enough.
Yep. Rookie numbers, bro. You got to bump those numbers up.
Well, okay, yes, I agree. I completely agree with that. But the thing is some of those firearms may be just collectibles. They may not necessarily be firearms that he plans on using or utilizing in the event that the poop hits the fan. So it very easily could just be that maybe he has 1,000 rounds or 2,000 rounds for those, and maybe he has like 10 firearms that he plans on using. Even then, that's still not a lot. 1,000 rounds per firearm is still not a lot.
Rookie numbers.
Better than 250. Still needs to bump it up a little bit.
Yeah, you got to bump them numbers up, bro. You got to bump those numbers up. That's rookie numbers. Yeah.
I know, but
that
tell
won't
me,
get you through the first day of the battle. It won't get you through the first day of the battle. We'll just say that. Yeah.
Well, that is in fact good. So let me ask you something. So I'll just throw this out there. Do you think it's better to have like multiple weapons or to have one weapon with multiple rounds of ammo? Well, not multiple rounds, multiple magazines, like a gang of magazines.
It's kind of a personal question. I mean, it's like you're writing a charging affidavit here.
Well,
Not
it's just
sure what
you always see in
the
the
reasoning
movies
is.
where the dude is walking around and he's got like, well, first of all, in the movies they have like 300 round magazines in these
Right,
handguns.
right. Yep, yep.
And by the way, every magazine for every handgun fits their handgun, no matter
Yes.
the caliber or anything.
Yep.
But it's always, I mean, there's always the, okay, do I have multiple magazines or do I go more with like the New York reload? Just have another
Well,
fire.
I'm a fan of the New York reload. I mean, that's my thing. But I believe in the minimum number of calibers possible, so you can share amongst your all of your little gun friends can share amongst themselves. You know.
A buddy of mine, he name will not be mentioned, loves his XD. So he has literally different sizes. He has XDs, and he has them in his house, and he has them in different rooms.
Yes.
So he's like, and it's all interchangeable. It's all the technique. Everything is all the same for everyone. So in the event that something happens, once again, poop hits the fan in his house, home invasion or something like that, he's always ready with the same handgun, same caliber, all
That's
that.
it. That's how you do it.
Very
That's how you
impressive.
do
Very
it,
impressive.
man.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Hey, how about giving a shout out to our sponsors?
Gorilla Machining and Grid Defense. Hello, Gorilla Machining and Grid Defense. Yay! We love these guys. They're great. They've been with us since day one. So tomorrow we should have some fabulous products to give away to our winners on Feedback Friday. Feedback Friday, folks. What's that? That's when you get to get involved with us and give the best comments, best questions, and we should have a live guest with us tomorrow. And we don't want to spoil it yet, but we'll just say that tune in tomorrow to see another three-way here on the Rundown.
It'll be a lot of fun. Now, folks, also want to remind you, if you are in the state of California, you want to make sure to follow up with the California Republican Assembly. They are California's oldest and fastest growing and largest conservative organization, advocating for your right to keep and bear arms, advocating for limited government, and working to elect politicians who are going to actually, advocate for those values. I always say this: if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Don't be a part of the problem. Become a member of the California Republican Assembly today. Anyway, folks, that's going to be it for today's program. We very much appreciate you tuning in. No matter how you're watching us, you may be watching us on CRA TV. You may be watching us on 2A News. You may be watching us on Arms Room Radio. But folks, you got to make sure, like and subscribe. Check out our YouTube channel. Make sure you go there. therundown.us will take you there. Make sure you're also liking us on Facebook so that you can follow us there as well. Like, share, subscribe.
You like us, we'll like you.